All right. Shalom, Israel. Shalom, shalom. This is Brother Wariala, and this is my channel, Rise of Israel. First and foremost, I like to give all honor and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh, who the world will call God. And I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, whose name is Yahweh Shai, but who the world will call Jesus, Yeshua, Joshua, Jesus Christos. But again, his real name is Yahweh Shai in the Paleo Hebrew. So as you can see by the title of the video and the thumbnail and the screen right now, this is a video going into, this is my second video going into the Tower of Babel, right? The title of this presentation is Ancient Megastructure, the Tower of Babel Mystery. So we're gonna look into the history behind this and what was the Tower of Babel and how does it identify? How do we identify it with history, right? Because according to, the scriptures and how we view history, how we view the Bible, this is world history. You know what I'm saying? This is Bible history, but this is also world history. Just like in, just like in Daniel 5, where it talks about how the Persians took over the Babylonians, we also see it happen in history. We see, in First Maccabees, we see Alexander the Great coming along, and he's a historic figure, right? He's doing the same thing that he did, in Israel. He did at that time. It's the same way they put it in the scriptures. You see what I'm saying? Same thing with Antiochus Epiphanes and major captivities that the Israelites have been through. It's history. You know what I'm saying? So we view this as history, and we're gonna go into it and try and find how well it aligns with world history. All right, so let's get into it. The biblical account, right? So here we have the biblical account of the Tower of Babel, and I'll just read it. Genesis 11:1, and it says, the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, right? We're going to go into what Shinar is, but it's pretty much Babylon. You know what I'm saying? It's in Mesopotamia, and I'll show you later where exactly it is. And they dwelt there, and they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole world, of the whole earth, right? So real quick, let's understand this one thing. And I'm not going to go too in depth into it on this slide, but we'll go into it further as we go, right? Understand this one thing. Look at the logic behind what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like tie down logic and reasoning to this, right? For instance, why would they build an actual tower in the middle of a city? You see what I'm saying? Like what's known for being, especially in ancient times, ancient Mesopotamia, what was one thing that was known to be in the midst of each city? You see what I'm saying? Like when during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, one of them came and built the city, and the other one came to help rebuild another structure, which was a temple. You see what I'm saying? So in ancient times, just understand that you'd have, each nation would have their best city, and they would have a temple. You see what I'm saying? To worship their gods, right? And Israel was similar in that aspect. Salakia, right? Verse 5. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower with which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go, let us let us go down and there confront their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from hence upon the face of all the earth, and left off to build the city. And they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the whole earth, right? So see the story. The Most High God scattered the nations that wanted to become in one in unity, and that's how multiple different languages have come into how we know them today, right? The Tower of Babel, a ziggurat, right? The Tower of Babel, according to Genesis 11:1 through 9, is described as a massive structure built by humanity to reach the heavens, right? Some scholars believe the Tower of Babel was a ziggurat, a type of stepped temple found in ancient Mesopotamia. Ziggurats were built to honor gods and serve as centers of worship and political power. Key similarities to ziggurats, right? We have that it was built with sun-dried bricks and bitumen, right? So pretty much brick and mortar, right? Just like Mesopotamian ziggurats, designed to reach the heavens. Ziggurats were meant, literally, I think the word ziggurat means a temple of the gods, but it says they were meant to bridge the gap between humans and gods. This is what they thought. Located in Mesopotamia, Babel is often linked to Babylon, a major center of ziggurat construction. Right? Again, we're talking about the land of Shinar. Pyramids versus ziggurats. Right now, I just kind of threw this slide in, because I just like what they said. Right? So, real quick, we'll read this and then we'll just jump over here. Egyptian pyramids and Mesopotamian ziggurats are geographic neighbors and architectural cousins, both towering structures of stones that dominate their landscape. However, these two structures meant very different things to the people who built them. Right? Let's go to the ziggurat. The ziggurats are the temples of ancient Mesopotamia. Right? So, what is a ziggurat? It's a temple. Right? It is a temple. Matter of fact, I want to go back real quick because I want to get back to my point. The Tower of Babel was a ziggurat, a type of stepped temple, right? It was a stepped temple. It's a temple that you would step on, right? What's another word for a stepped temple? We're about to grab it right here. All right. Real quick, this is Genesis 11:4. Where it says, and they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth, right? So let's go to tower, right? Let's see what they have for tower. H4026, right? Let's see what it says.
Strong's H 4026. Migdal,
right? So let's see what we have, right? It is a tower, elevated stage. What did we just see? It is a stepping temple, right? Temple is no different than a stage or a pulpit. A pulpit, a raised bed, right? A raised bed, right? Matter of fact, let's grab this right here. All right, a tower so called from its height. So it's only called a tower due to its height, especially used of the tower of fortified cities and castles. Elsewhere used of watchtower vineyard, metaphorically speaking, used of powerful strong men. Look what it says right here: a lofty platform, right? It is a lofty platform. A bed in a garden rising up and higher in the middle. There was another part to grab. Right? A lofty platform. This is something that was higher. You know what I'm saying? It's just an exalted temple. Right? Exalted temple. As we see, right? They even called it a pyramidal structure, right? A pyramidal bed of flowers, whatever that may mean, but still we see that it's referring to pyramid, right? So let's get back to the other one. Okay. So a temple of Mesopotamia, ziggurats means house of gods. See, let us build a tower that we may reach unto heaven, right? They were built for the gods and only priests and high society people were allowed in them. So they were built for the gods, right? Let us create a tower that we may reach up unto heaven. You see what I'm saying? Salakia. This is literally the whole purpose of it. You see what I'm saying? They wanted to create something that they may be able to reach unto heaven. Right? So let's keep going. They were located in the major cities of Mesopotamia. Here, listen to this part right here. Listen to this part, this last one. The ziggurats are made on the highest part of the city, and steps are made to reach the top, and they also had the basement area, which protects the priests and high society from the floods. So what does it do? So what does a ziggurat help with? It helps prevent floods. How ironic that surely after a global catastrophe like the flood, if you haven't seen it, watch my video on the flood stories. But how crazy is it that just a few generations out of the flood, they now mankind now wants to build a structure, a temple that is exalts up into the sky and is a temple that is meant to survive floods. How ironic, right? And they say, and people say that the Bible isn't real. Let's grab this real quick, right? So I asked the question, ziggurats help prevent floods, right? AI says this. Yes, ziggurats were built to help prevent flooding, but both by their physical stature through sophisticated drainage systems. So they took a lot of thought into this. Their elevated high platforms provided a safe place above rising waters, while integrating drainage systems helped manage both wastewater and rainwater. So it was literally created to prevent against floods, right? Just think about it. You have these other nations that want to build a temple that was so high that they could reach into the heavens, and that they become one people, that they don't get scattered across the earth around the world, right? I mean, who's to say that that isn't them speaking of, hey, let's create something that the flood can't take away. You see what I'm saying? Who knows, right? Elevated location. Ziggurats were built on high platforms, making them a secure place to go during annual inundations or devastating floods that affected the low-lying river valleys of Mesopotamia, right? Security with only a few stairways or ramps leading to the top, the structure was easy for a small number of guards to defend and provide a safe sanctuary. So it was literally made and created to prevent against floods. And this is not biblically moved or spoken of. Let's keep going. Some ziggurats incorporated advanced drainage systems. These included waterproof reed mats and layers of bitumen within the structure, and a network of baked clay drains to channel wastewater and rainwater away from the building and the settlement. The builders used composite materials with altering layers of bricks and sandy soil laced with reeding mat to create a stable and waterproof foundation that could withstand the constant moisture from rain and floods. It's very simple, right? Let's go to another one real quick. So here we go with Herodotus. Discuss the Salakia. Right, discuss the purpose of the ziggurat, claiming that the god Marduk of Babylon, referred to Herodotus as Zeus, was believed to come down to the temple at the top of the city ziggurat to sleep with a woman who lived there. No statue of Marduk was kept in the temple, only the woman. This custom, as Herodotus suggests, was in keeping with belief that the god would have sexual intercourse with a chosen woman to ensure fertility of the land. It is also possible, as scholar Stephen Bertman points out, that the ziggurats served the purpose of safety and preservation, right? So just imagine something traumatic like a global flood happening. People want something that can give them safety and preservation, right? Let's keep going. And here's what's so funny, right? Here's what's so funny. I don't even want to get into it, but still, let's get into it. In a land ravaged by flood, the ziggurat was merely a monumental means to raise up a shrine and protect it from water damage. It was used to protect from water damage. That was the purpose of a ziggurat. So anybody speaking on the, how, um, you know, the scriptures aren't real, explain why this is the case, right? Why is that even a thing? Why are ziggurats meant to help from floods, right? Let's keep going. And I had a video I was going to show, but it seems like we got the point. All right, where was Babel, the land of Shinar, right? Biblical location, Shinar, right? Shinar is identified with Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates River, right? The Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians built cities and massive structures here. Babel, became the dominant city under rulers like Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar II. Possible location of the Tower of Babel, right? People say Babylon, right? That's the most famous one. The most commonly suggested site, home of massive ziggurats. Eridu, in this book's like the Eridu Genesis speaks about, a flood as well. But Eridu, one of the world's oldest cities, associated with the Sumerian flood and early kings. Borsippa, home of ruined ziggurat, once called the Tongue Tower by locals. The Tongue Tower. Should have added more information on that. All right, let's keep going. Ziggurats, ancient Mesopotamian towers. What is a ziggurat? A stepped pyramidal structure built as a temple in Mesopotamian cities, used for religious worship, dedicated to the city's patron deity, right? So that's why they built a tower in the midst of the city, right? Because they had a god that they wanted to worship, right? And understanding how things were, Salakia. Understanding how things were in Mesopotamia, they had many different strange gods. You see what I'm saying? Constructed with sun-dried mud bricks and a stairway leading to the top, right? Famous ziggurats. Here's a few famous ziggurats that we know of today. The Entemenaki, Babylon, the Great Ziggurat of Marduk, possibly the Tower of Babel. Many people say this is a big one. People often call this the Tower of Babel, this place right here. But we also have the Ziggurat of Ur, well-preserved temple dedicated to the moon god Nana, right? And then we have the Borsippa Ziggurat, the one we just spoke about, called the Tongue Tower, and later historical records, right? It's called the Tongue Tower. I wonder why. Something would be called the Tongue Tower. Maybe because it's the tower that multiple people lost their native tongue and started speaking different tongues and languages, right? Here are these comparisons to the Tower of Babel. Similar in design, a tall step structure reaching the sky, right? Built with bricks and bitumen, just like we see in Genesis 11:3, associated with human ambition and divine punishment, right? Very similar. Here's a few famous ziggurats, and we're going to go into the ones that we had just read. Entemenaki, Babylon, right? The Great Ziggurat of Marduk, possibly the Tower of Babel, right? Here's what we know about this. It is the house of the foundation of heaven and earth, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's what Entemenaki stands for. That's what the word means, right? The monumental Ziggurat of Marduk in ancient Babylon. Originally built around the 2nd millennium BC. So they say around like 2000 BC, if I'm not mistaken. Rebuilt many times, including by Nebuchadnezzar II, and this is around the 6th century BC, estimated to have stood about 300 feet tall, making it one of the tallest structures in the ancient world. Ancient Jewish, Christian, and Babylonian sources all identify it as a probable historical Tower of Babel. So just think about this. I did a video recently on the flood stories and how much proof there are of the flood being a thing. Now we're able to go into a complete different presentation, talking about how the Tower of Babel was a thing. How much more proof would you even want? right? So next we have destroyed multiple times, especially during the Persian and later Hellenistic periods. So the Persians and the Greeks played a role in destroying it. Nanki, the real Tower of Babel. Etemenanki, the house of the foundation of heaven and earth, a massive ziggurat in Babylon dedicated to Marduk, the chief god, 91 meters tall, 300 feet. The structure was destroyed, rebuilt multiple times, similar to how Babel was abandoned in the Bible. Good point. It was destroyed and rebuilt. Just like Babel was, ceased from growing. Right. Ancient mentions, different people have mentioned, call it. We have Herodotus, Berosus, and Nebuchadnezzar II. And I think Berosus will go further into Berosus when they say that a great tower was destroyed by the gods. We'll look into that. Could this be the Tower of Babel, located in Babylon, a massive unfinished tower associated with powerful empire and linguistic diversity? Who knows? The Ziggurat of Ur, right? Well-preserved temple dedicated to the moon god, Nana. The Ziggurat of Ur of the Chaldees, constructed by King Ur-Nammu around 2100 BC, making it one of the oldest and best preserved ziggurats. And it looks really well preserved for being over 4,000 years old. Originally a massive three-tiered structure dominating the city of Ur, extensively restored by later kings and again in modern times and early 2000s, shows the architectural style and religious purpose of Sumerian ziggurats, helping clarify what the Tower of Babel may have looked like, right? And this is an old structure, and many people believe that this may have been a perfect example of what the Tower of Babel looked like. That's why we argue that the Tower of Babel was a ziggurat, right? Let's look at the Borsippa ziggurat, right? Burz Nimrod, ancient nickname the Tongue Tower, located about 10 miles southwest of Babylon, associated with the god Nabu, Marduk's scribe and son. Its ruins are strikingly twisted and collapsed. Ancient writers link this destruction with the confusion of languages. Several later Mesopotamian and medieval sources explicitly call it the Tower of Tongues, connecting it to the Babel myth, right? Though smaller than Etemenanki, its dramatic ruins made it a major candidate for the Tower of Babel in early archaeology. That's a fair point, right? It's called the Tongue Tower. You see what I'm saying? And it was absolutely destroyed, very destroyed and embarrassed in an embarrassing way. Many people argue this was the Tower of Babel. Confounding the languages, right? Let's see what we have next. The Tower of Babel, the Tower of Babel and language confusion, right? Genesis 11, it states that let us confuse their language so they will not understand each other. The Bible describes God confusing human language, leading to the scattering of nations. Some scholars compare this to real historical language divergence in Mesopotamia. In Sumerian mythology, a text, and Merkur and the Lord of Arata, describes a time when all people spoke one language before the gods caused confusion. We're going to read that too. Did the Tower of Babel represent human unity? In both the Bible and Mesopotamian texts, a great structure is linked to human ambition and divine intervention. The collapse of Babel reflects the reality of Mesopotamian city-states, which were often divided by language and political rivalries, right? So we see that there are books that also state that there was that the gods confounded the language of the people. All right, let's keep going. The language confusion in ancient texts. Genesis 11:7. Let us confuse the language so they will not understand each other. The Bible states that Babel was where humanity's single language was divided. Does history support this idea? Sumerian text and Merkur and the Lord of Arata, a Mesopotamian text from 2000 2100 BC, describes a time when all people spoke one language. The gods confused their speech. This was a divine punishment for human ambition, similar to the Tower of Babel story, but written centuries earlier, right? Centuries earlier than the Bible wrote it, right? To show that this was an actual thing that may have happened. Mesopotamia was home to multiple languages: Sumerian, Akkadian, Elamite, and later Aramaic. By 2000 BC, linguistic diversity was common in cities like Babylon. Was the Tower of Babel an explanation for real historical language shifts? Historical evidence. Berosus Abedinus, the Tower of Babel account. Berosus, a 3rd century BC Babylonian priest, historian writing in Greek. His work survived only through later authors, especially Abedinus, Eusebius, and Syncellus. He provided non-biblical Mesopotamian traditions, making his testimony historically valuable, right? So he didn't lean on the Bible for this, right? What the passage says describes early humans who were powerful and arrogant, attempting to build a tower reaching the heavens, right? The gods destroyed the tower using great winds and divided humanity's single language into many tongues. The ruin is located where Babylon stands, and the confusion of language gives the name Babel, right? This is one of the earliest non-biblical accounts of the Tower of Babel story. It comes from the same geographic culture where biblical narrative is set. Shows that the story exists independently of the book of Genesis, right? So that's important, that it doesn't rely on the book of Genesis, right? It establishes that the tower, the divine destruction, and the confusion of languages were known across cultures, strengthening the claim that Genesis reflects real ancient memory, not later invention. All right. Its preservation by Greco-Roman historians adds multiple layers of cooperation. Let's keep going. Berosus, right, from Abydinus, of the Chaldean kings and the deluge, preserved through Eusebius and Syncellus, right? The Tower of Babel. And this is what it says. They say that the first inhabitants of the earth, glorying in their own strength and size and despising the gods, undertook to raise a tower whose top should reach the sky, in the place in which Babylon now stands. But when it approached the heaven, the winds assisted the gods and introduced a diversity of tongues among men, who till that time had all spoken in the same language, and a war arose between Cronus and Titan. The place in which they built the tower is now called Babylon, on account of the confusion of the tongues, for confusion is by the Hebrews called Babel. Euseb, for so on and so forth, right? 3rd century BC, right? So Berosus, Chaldeus, we see that his account, what is written, talks about Babylon being the place in which these major events happened, right? But let's keep going. And Merkur and the Lord of Arata, the Sumerian language change account, right? A Sumerian epic poet dated to around 2100, 2000 BC, making it older than the book of Genesis, written in cuneiform on tablets found in ancient Uruk, which is modern day Iraq, concerns King Merkur, a legendary early ruler, and his competition with the distant land of Arata. Describes an early time when all mankind spoke a language. The god Enki is invoked in a spell-like passage to change or confuse the speech of the people, disrupting the unity of their language. The theme centers in imperial ambition, Uruk trying to assert dominance over Arata. Language disruption is portrayed as a divine act responding to human political and cultural overreach, right? So the theme such as empirical ambition, Uruk trying to assert dominance over Arata, right? So it says that the god Envy is invoked in a spell-like passage to change or confuse the speech of the people, disrupting the unity of their language, right? Let's keep going. This is, and why, the person may ask, why does this matter, right? This is the oldest known reference to the idea of one universal language being divided by divine action. It predates the biblical Tower of Babel by centuries, showing the concept was well established in Mesopotamia. Though it does not mention a tower, it contains the core element of the Babel story: unity, human ambition, divine intervention, linguistic fragmentation, right? Demonstrates that the Hebrew authors inherited or responded to older Mesopotamian traditions. Slakia. Slakia, I just made a mistake. There we go. All right. Why it's included in this presentation? It serves as ancient corroboration. Salakia. It serves as ancient corroboration that early civilizations preserved a memory of humanity once speaking one language. It shows that linguistic confusion as an act of God or gods was a recognized theme far beyond the Bible. It supports the argument that the Tower of Babel narrative reflects a deep ancient cultural memory, not a later invention. It provides a pre-biblical literary parallel that strengthens the historical credibility of the Genesis account. Let's go. Right now, let's read what it says, right? It says, at such a time, may the lands of Suber and Hamazi, the many-tongued, and Sumer, the great mountain of the Me of magnificence, and Akkad, the land possessing all that is befitting, and Martu, land resisting in security, the whole universe, the well-guarded people, may they all address Enlil together in a single language, right? Listen, for at that time, for the ambitions of the lords, for the ambitious lords, for the ambitious princes, for the ambitious kings, Enki, the Lord of abundance, and of steadfast decisions, the wise and knowing Lord of the land, the expert of the gods, chosen of wisdom, the Lord of Eredug, shall change the speech in their mouths, as many as he had placed there, and so the speech of mankind is truly one. So it tells you that the Lord, Enki, if I'm not mistaken, or Enlil, I think it's Enki, he's the one that changed mankind's speech from being a mankind true language to speaking multiple languages, right? And mind you, this is 2,300 BC, according to scholarly estimates, right? This is far before the Bible, right? And you understand, we don't expect them to write it in the way that the Bible writes it. This is a different perspective, and this is different writers. According to the scriptures, they wrote it like it's a historic account. This is written more in the realm of, well, it's written in how they viewed it as a historical account. But understand it's also written in mythology, right? Let's keep going. Again, understand, the Lord of Eredok shall change the speech in their mouths, as many as he had placed there. And so the speech of mankind is truly one. So mankind's speech was truly one, but it was changed into many diverse language, right? Let's keep going. The Ziggurat of Babylon and Temenaki, the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. We really don't have to go through this, but I'll go through it anyway. A massive ziggurat in Babylon dedicated to Salakia. Bear with me. Bear with me. The house of foundation of heaven and earth, a massive ziggurat in Babylon dedicated to Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, estimated to be 300 feet, 91 meters tall, making it one of the tallest structures, so on and so forth. And we kind of went through this already. The point being, and that was pretty much it on the slide. Let me make sure we got through everything. Yeah, that was everything pretty much. 20 slides. We knocked it all out. I want you to write in the comments what you think. Is this enough evidence to prove that the Tower of Babel was a thing? You know what I'm saying? And the events that are related to the Tower of Babel, is that real? Is it possible given the information provided? Write in the comments what you think, right? But you can't argue with the evidence that proves it, or that at least hints towards it. Even when you look at the ziggurats found in South America, you know what I'm saying, Mexico. We understand, especially if you take the position that the lost 12 tribes of Israel would be in the Americas, understanding that they were taken out of a land that had multiple ziggurats, and that was Assyria, right? And they were brought into the and they traveled to the Americas, and now you see ziggurats. You know what I'm saying? Like how often do you see a ziggurat of such stature in South America, and such similarities to that of the ziggurats in Mesopotamia, right? But again, Lord willing, this edifying video through the Spirit. I pray that anyone watching, if it may just be one person, Lord willing, they found edification watching this video, and may this be an example of proof showing that the Bible is real and is true and is not a false book. Lord willing, this edifying video through the Spirit, I'd like to give all honor and glory to the Most High God Yahweh, by Shema Mashiach Malak Shai, Kwame Yasharala, Shalom.